Well, apparently, one of my Demon Slayer opinions is a hot take, but I truly believe that this kid is the worst Hashira in Demon Slayer. And turns out, he's a lot of people's favorites. The thing is, I get it, because at some point when he was introduced, I thought he was gonna be my favorite too. Cool demeanor, cool breathing style, powerful, he seemed so awesome, but I just hate the character arc that he goes through. I tweeted this at the start of the season, and a lot of you disagree, and so I had to wait. I kept quiet until now because I didn't want to give you any spoilers, but now that we've ended season 3, or is this season 4? Was Mugen Train season 2, or does that count as season 1.5? Because it was a movie?
Was Mugen Train Season 2 with Entertainment District being 2.5, so now we're on Season 3? No, wait, that doesn't sound right.
My head is foggy. But now that the season is finally over, we can talk about it in a spoiler-free way. Fantastic season, by the way. Back when I read it, I thought it had the worst Hashira, the worst demons. Okay, maybe this demon isn't so bad. This guy, screw him, worst by far. But this guy, I like the gimmick, I like it when he splits, and I like the design on his final form, but there's just a lot that I also dislike. It's a really cool design, but the dude straight up just sits in place, hitting his drums while the wood dragon does his work for him. That's kind of lame. But at the same time, this season had a really awesome setting, some incredible side characters, and the best ending we've had so far. I thought I was safe because I had read what happened, but these guys, they just animate stuff so well. The last episode absolutely destroyed me. It left me a shell of a human being. But it's not just the emotional ride. I love how it changes the Demon Slayer universe, how it sets things into motion. It's really well done. And I wanted to preface this video like this because I do love Demon Slayer, and the writing is, not its strongest suit. I think in season 1 it's kind of whatever, but then it improves over time. Its events become more meaningful, you become a lot more familiar with these characters, so everything just hits a lot harder, which is why it was surprising to me to see such a big writing fail in this season. And that writing fail is called Tokito Muichiro. Let's talk about it. We first see the Mist Hashira in season 1, but we don't really get our first interaction with him until the second episode of the Swordsmith Village. And he immediately made a great first impression with me. It's true that I hate his guts now, but up until episode 3 of this new season, I thought this character was awesome. And for me, it all starts with his breathing style. In Demon Slayer, you've got some of the usual elements for breathing styles, which can be quite predictable. You've got fire, you've got water, you've got the other fire, which is not really fire, you got thunder, and so on. Plenty of anime use these base elements to make some cool characters with awesome powers. But I do love it when authors are a bit more creative and they give us these types of powers that are not so common and you don't see them everywhere. In Demon Slayer, some of these end up being very unique and interesting, like Inosuke's beast breathing. I think that one has some really cool effects and it fits the character perfectly. And then we have some others that are a bit harder to wrap your head around, like love breathing, which makes your sword bendy. I don't really get it. Mist is definitely on the interesting type side. While not completely unique, as we've seen other shows do a lot with Mist, it's not a classic element that you see every time, but it's one with a ton of potential, so I'm already digging this character. And then, perhaps more importantly, we have his personality. I was waiting for this archetype to arrive in Demon Slayer. Muichiro is logical and cold, and on his first interaction, he comes across as a total jerk while talking to this young swordsmith called Kotetsu. But I found myself taking Muichiro's side because he was right. He's being a jerk because Kotetsu won't give him the key to the mechanical doll, which Muichiro needs to train. Every second that Kotetsu wastes here, lives are being lost. That's what it means to get in the way of a Hashira. Their time is so precious, whether it be when they're training, recovering, or spending time in actual missions. If you waste a Hashira's time, then you are actively letting people die. And this goddamn kid does not want to give Muichiro the key because he doesn't want the doll to break. That's the doll's entire point! And he lets Tanjiro break it later! So why did we just waste a Hashira's time then? So that kid was a dumbass and he deserved the slapping he got. That said, Muichiro could have been kinder in this interaction. Tanjiro even comes out and acknowledges that he's correct in everything he said, but he just can't stand the way he says all of these things. And I do think that in this situation, if Muichiro was kinder, it would have been resolved a lot quicker, he wouldn't waste so much time. But in most situations, you just get dragged around into other people's problems by being empathetic and sticking around and being kind and compassionate and all of that, as we're about to see later in the season. And as a Hashira, you don't have that luxury. I also love how later in the episode, Tanjiro notes that he does not sense a whiff of malice from Muichiro. He's a jerk, but he's not evil. He's just very logical. At the end of the day, Muichiro is choosing the path that leads to most lives saved, even if these idiots don't realize it. Also, he seems to have some memory problems. You could say that his head is foggy, and I like that pun. I don't know if he's my favorite Hashira at this point. It's gonna be very hard to dethrone Rengoku for me, but that's a very solid start, and right now I'm excited to see where things go from here. The following episode is where we have the turning point. It happens because of a single sentence that Tanjiro tells him. Whatever you do for others comes around to help you as well in the end. This hits Muichiro in a very significant way. It triggers something in him that doesn't become evident until later in the season, but the single line is where things start falling apart. Coincidentally, the demons attack, Muichiro is blown away from the battle against the upper four, and he quickly realizes that the village is under attack when he sees Kotetsu struggling, but he correctly thinks that saving the kid is a low priority. The village chief comes first, but because of what Tanjiro said, against his own reasoning, he ends up saving Kotetsu. Now, in my opinion, this is fine. This was a quick save, now we can just resume our mission. We can save Kotetsu on the way to saving the village, and the village chief and everyone else, Kotetsu is asking him to save someone else. And Muichiro, even though he already knows how big of an idiot Kotetsu is, based on how bad his reasoning was with the doll situation, he decides that, sure, I'll go save your friend. This path that Muichiro goes down murders an entire village. That's how this would have ended if not for sheer dumb luck. The love Hashira, Kanroji, happened to be close to the village, and that's the whole reason that she is able to make it back and save the village chief. You see the scenario right here? This is what Muichiro abandoned to go save 3 people in total. All of these people in the shot, including the village chief, would all be dead because Kotetsu asked Muichiro to save 2 of his friends, and Muichiro complied. It's like he's now stuck doing side quests and he's looking at the main quest timer running out, and that main quest timer ends in game over if not for Kanroji making it to the scene. Because imagine for a second that she wasn't there. Muichiro had no idea where she was. And let's say that Muichiro is still able to finish the upper 5. Let's say Tanjiro and his friends are able to finish the upper 4 even without Kanroji's help, which I don't think they could, but let's imagine the best case scenario. This sounds like a victory, but the entire Swordsmith Village is gone, except for maybe like 10 smiths. This is game over. Slayers no longer have anyone to make blades for them. And you've seen how often they break their swords. Like, they're left without weapons to fight against the demons. Training new smiths, regrowing this entire village is gonna take years. This is something that humanity cannot survive. In this scenario, Muzan just wins. It's game over. As you can probably tell by now, I'm not a fan of this turn. This perfectly logical character starts making some really bad choices, and this happens without much of an explanation at this point, or at least it wasn't obvious yet. Tanjiro's words naturally triggered something in Muichiro, but how was that enough for him to go from being extremely logical to making terrible decisions in just a few minutes? It didn't sit well with me, but I'm sure that once the backstory gets explained, everything will make sense, right? Everything will make sense, right? Muichiro's backstory is tragic, as one would expect. Illness took his mother's life, and while finding herbs, his dad died too, leaving Muichiro alone with his twin brother. His brother seems to have been affected the hardest by the loss of their parents. It just made him cold and uncaring, but Muichiro not so much. He kept on being the compassionate child he always was. And in fact, this new demeanor from his brother bothers him quite a bit. On one hot summer night, the two are attacked by a demon, which injures Muichiro's brother, and this is when Muichiro blacks out. He only sees red, and when he comes to, turns out he's been doing fatalities on the demon until sunrise. The brother eventually dies, and Muichiro comes close to death too, and that's when he's found by the master's family, who heal him and train him to be a swordsman. But these events caused him to lose his memory, and either the loss of his brother or the malnutrition from spending days right next to him, or even a combination of the two. Muichiro forgets who he is, and that is kind of the character that we meet at the Swordsmith Village. Now, I do see what the author did here, and I see what she's going for, and I think she was successful, as most people seem to have taken that interpretation. Muichiro's trauma caused him to act like his brother when he lost his memory, and the fact that Tanjiro reminded Muichiro of his dad triggered him to recover his memories, slowly becoming that compassionate person that he used to be before he even remembered the full thing. I get that, and I even appreciate the detail that both Tanjiro and Muichiro's dad have the same colored eyes, since Muichiro is confirmed to be a descendant of the first breathing style, and Tanjiro has been learning the Hino Kamikagura that's been passed down through the family, so it's a good hint that there's something there. But unfortunately, this was not the interpretation I took away from the story. I saw this as a weak attempt to create empathy for a character that was a jerk so far. And to me, what Muichiro became was not really a compassionate character, he turned into an idiot. His decision, based on compassion, could have caused an entire village to be slaughtered. That's not compassion. That's being narrow-sighted. That's basically saving someone because they're right in front of you while ignoring everyone else just because you can't see them. And the show does try to prove Tanjiro right in this moment when you see Kotetsu helping Muichiro out. You see Muichiro helped Kotetsu, and now Kotetsu helps Muichiro, just like Tanjiro said. He does this by breathing into this bubble. I don't even know how it works. The thing is, Muichiro wouldn't even be in this situation if he wasn't trying to protect you guys and getting hit by poisonous needles after he told you to get lost because you're getting in his way. And I just don't buy for a second that he behaved like his brother when he had memory loss. Doesn't make any sense to me, because sure, maybe he talked like his brother used to, but his brother was never in the kinds of situations that Muichiro was as a Hashira. They never left the house or the mountain where they lived. That was their entire life. And Muichiro became a Hashira. He went on many different journeys to many different lands, slaying all kinds of demons, meeting all kinds of people. He's been in situations that his brother never even dreamed of. Experiencing all of this, you don't just become your brother. To me, the logical decisions that he made along the way were all his own, and now that he regained compassion, that logic just disappears. I just don't buy it. But even if you do believe this story that he behaved like his brother when he lost his memory and he was a jerk because of the trauma that he suffered as a kid, even that story doesn't track. When Muichiro remembered his trauma, that's when he became kind again. When he didn't remember it, that's when he was a jerk. So if you like this character for how compassionate he has become, just remember, when he had no memory of anything, he was an asshole. Think about what that means. You do not remember your past, so you default to being a jerk. A lot of this just felt incredibly forced to me, but being realistic or not is not really here nor there. It's a story, so as long as there's some credibility, there's some logic on how things happen and how events connect to each other, I'm fine with that. But in this story, I completely lost that trail. But most of all, I feel like we were robbed of a really cool character. Because even if he was a jerk, it was justified by his strong conviction that what he was doing was the correct path to take, the path that would save the most lives. But then, as it turns out, he never had a strong conviction to begin with. He was never sure of himself, because how could he? He didn't even remember who he was. So he was just an anxious and incomplete mess all along, but now that he's recovered his memories, he's kind of just become another nice dude. He has no strong beliefs or convictions. He has a strong fury against demons, but I mean, who doesn't in this universe? There's a chance the anime does some stuff that the manga doesn't on the upcoming arc, so there's a chance he's not as lame as I thought going forward. But right now, at the end of this arc, I think it's impressive that I dislike a Hashira more than the one using love as a breathing style. And that's because I think he's a much weaker character than every other Hashira we've met and every other Hashira we'll meet in the future. Kind of. There's one other guy that I think the backstory kind of ruined him, but it's still probably not as bad as this. That's spoilers though, so that we'll leave it at that. But that's it. That's my Muichiro rant. Great season though. Ufotable did it again. I cannot wait for the next one for sure. I'm very curious as to what's gonna happen to the anime from here on out, because we're getting to that part where the manga starts to be a bit rushed. So I hope they take their time and make some anime original content, because a lot of topics in that manga could use some real fleshing out. And I hope we see all of this in a Demon Slayer game at some point. Probably a sequel to Hinokami Chronicles if I had to guess. But here's the state of the game if you just want to jump in right now. We've got some cool tournaments going on the Anime Games Community Discord server, always with a lot of players. So if you want to jump into competitive, check out the tier list and then ignore everything I said and just play whatever's fun for you. Thanks for watching. Bye.